Okay, so the U.S. immigration system, especially the H-1B visa for skilled workers, just got hit by an absolute shockwave. A completely unexpected presidential proclamation has thrown a massive curveball into the whole process. So let's dive in and try to make sense of what just happened.
To really get why this is such a big deal, you first have to understand the incredible pressure the system was already under. Right now, U.S. Citizenship and Immigration Services is dealing with a backlog of 11.3 million applications. That's not just a big number, it's the highest it has ever been in the agency's history.
And this isn't just, paperwork in a pile. For the thousands of skilled professionals, particularly from India, who rely on these visas, this backlog has turned their lives into, well, the American Bazaar put it perfectly, a waiting game of uncertainty, frustration, and existential risk. So that's the backdrop, a system already at its absolute breaking point.
So, how are we going to break all this down? First, we'll look at the crisis that was already brewing. Then, we'll see how a big push for modernization collided with a wall of bureaucracy, right before that $100,000 shock hit. We'll get super clear on who the new rules affect, and finally, we'll explore what the path forward even looks like now.
All right, let's dive right in. Let's take a closer look at this system in crisis. It's not just that the backlog is huge, it's that it's growing, and fast.
Just take a look at this chart. The numbers are pretty wild. In just 1 year, processing times for employment visas shot up by 80%. Work permits, up 79%. But the real jaw-dropper? Green card renewals. A 938% increase in processing time. I mean, that's not a system that's just slow. It's one that's grinding to a halt. And you have to remember, behind every single one of those data points is a real person whose life is on hold. People who can't confidently sign a lease or buy a house. And for businesses, it means losing out on top talent. This isn't just an inconvenience. It's a real threat to America's ability to compete on the world stage.
Now, what's so fascinating here is that right in the middle of all this chaos, there was actually this big push to modernize everything. But it set up this kind of collision course between forward-thinking ideas and the system's own crushing complexity.
On the one hand, you had these really promising new rules that were about to kick in. For the first time, entrepreneurs and startup founders could be eligible for an H1B. That's a huge deal. They also expanded what are called cap exemptions for nonprofits, so those hires wouldn't count against the yearly limit. And for students, they offered a longer cap, which is that super important bridge that lets them keep working while they switch from a student visa to an H1B, a huge relief for them.
But all that good stuff, it just runs smack into a brick wall of bureaucracy. This is the standard H1B process. It's a 10-step marathon. Just look at step 3. The wage determination alone can take up to 5 months. And then you get all the way to the end, step 9, and bam, another 8 to 11 months of waiting. It's like putting a brand new engine in a car that has square wheels.
And it's into this mess, this system pulling in 2 different directions, that the real shockwave hit. Out of nowhere, on September 19, 2025, a presidential proclamation drops, and it changes the game completely, overnight.
And the heart of it? A brand new fee, $100,000. A number so big, it just fundamentally changes what the program is. So let's get into the specifics. The proclamation came out on September 19th, and it mandated this fee for any new H-1B petition for someone who was physically outside the United States. But here's the kicker. Look at that effective date, September 21st. That's less than 48 hours notice. Just incredible. Now, what was the official reason for this? Well, the proclamation itself said the program was being, quote, deliberately exploited to replace rather than supplement American workers with lower-paid, lower-skilled labor. The stated goal was that this massive fee would stop that alleged abuse from happening.
So, you can probably guess what happened next, right? Total chaos. Confusion, panic. So what we need to do now is clear things up. Who does this actually affect and who is safe?
The immediate reaction was just a scramble. We heard reports of H-1B workers who were overseas for work or family, literally dropping everything, trying to book flights to get back to the U.S. before that deadline hit. They were terrified they'd be locked out or their companies would get hit with this fee.
Okay, so once the dust settled a bit, the White House did provide some clarity, and this is probably the most important thing you need to know. That $100,000 fee, it only applies to new petitions for people who are physically outside the United States. So if you're already here in the U.S., or you're just extending your visa or switching jobs, you are not affected.
That was a huge, huge relief for a lot of people.
And to see just how much a policy like this can shake things up, look at this. Back in 2018, under a different set of rules, denial rates for these visas shot up to 15%. But by 2024, they'd plummeted to a record low of just 2.5%. This new fee, it's like an earthquake for the system. You can bet we're going to see another massive swing in these numbers.
All right, so where does all of this leave us? What's the path forward for companies that need to hire global talent and for the workers themselves?
The reality is, it's pretty brutal. For most companies, a $100,000 fee for every new hire from abroad basically takes the H-1B visa right off the table. It just becomes completely unusable.
And that means everyone is now scrambling to find Plan B or Plan C or D. We're seeing a huge new focus on other visa types. Things like the L1, that's for transferring someone from a foreign office, or the O1 for people with extraordinary ability. And then you have all these country-specific visas, like the TN for folks from Canada and Mexico. These are all about to get a lot more popular.
Which really brings us to the big, final question here. The whole point of the H-1B was to bring the best and brightest to the U.S. We're in a global race for talent, right? Every major country is fighting for the top scientists, engineers, and innovators. So you have to ask, how does a move like this reshape America's ability to win that race, and what does it mean for the future of innovation? That is the multi-trillion-dollar question we're all left with.